Just 1 second, making sure I'm sharing my slides. Dr. Kurlavage is the director of NCI Center for Biomedical Informatics and Information Technology, where he oversees CBIT's mission to accelerate cancer research by empowering scientists and clinicians with the data and tools they need to drive their research. Dr. Gidri Aval is the director of NCI's Office of Data Sharing. Both Dr. Kurlavage and Dr. Gidri Aval serve as part of the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative leadership team. Please welcome each of them as we begin.
Thanks, Nina, and thanks to everybody who's joined us here today. As Nina said, my name is Tony Kurlavage, and it's a pleasure to speak with you today. Here in CBIT, we recognize the critical importance of using data to advance knowledge and improve outcomes for patients with cancer, particularly with rare childhood cancers, where the overall numbers of cases are much fewer. NCI is developing the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative, or CCDI, to address this essential need and ensure that data is made broadly available to provide maximum benefits to all patients. As Nina mentioned, Jamie and I will share some updates on this important data-focused effort in childhood, adolescent, and young adult populations. Jamie will begin the session by providing an overview of the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative and its focus on data and data sharing, as well as provide summaries from our recent CCDI symposium and input to our Cancer Research Ideas website. I'll then discuss the progress of the initiative, how CCDI is supported by and enhances other ongoing initiatives at CBIT and the NCI, and then I'll wrap up by outlining next steps for the NCI in this data initiative. Following the presentation, Jamie and I will answer questions provided through our webinar chat feature. With that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Jamie Gidri Aval.
Thank you, Tony, and I also would like to thank and welcome those who have joined us here today. So, as you all may know, in his State of the Union address this year, the President proposed a $500 million investment for childhood cancer to take place over the next 10 years, with a recommended amount for fiscal year FY 2020 beginning at $50 million. In the weeks that followed, the White House convened several events to discuss how this funding dedicated to childhood cancers might actually accelerate progress in this space. It was decided that data sharing would be the focus of this initiative, and although data may seem abstract when we're talking about kids with cancer, I'm sure we all understand the enormous value that it has in helping to find new treatment options. I think we all share the same emotional response when we see a child with cancer. We all want to do whatever it takes to find new treatments, and it's far easier to do this with larger populations. With childhood, adolescent, and young adult cancers, we have to think differently. There are smaller numbers of these cancers, and collaboration among children's cancer centers is crucial because larger data sets are needed in order to answer complex questions. Here are some of the ways that we believe that a focus on data aggregation and sharing amongst researchers can help. Even our most effective treatments for all patients, and we don't know why. Aggregating and sharing data will help improve our understanding of why some cancers develop resistance or don't respond to treatment at all. For instance, in cancers like acute lymphoblastic leukemia, where 5-year survival rates are high, our most effective treatments don't work for all patients. There remains many children that relapse or don't respond at all to current therapies. So aggregating and sharing data can help us to improve our understanding of why some of these cancers simply don't respond to treatment. Secondly, we don't fully understand short and long-term adverse effects of cancer and its treatments. Aggregating and sharing data will help us to identify less toxic treatments and allow us to tailor strategies for individual patients. As I'm sure many of you are aware, cancer treatments, even when they work, are highly toxic and taxing on young developing bodies. Survivors of childhood cancers face lifelong chronic health conditions as a result of their treatments, including development of secondary cancers, and a number of survivors are continually expanding. The reality is that we don't fully understand how to treat them. Finally, virtually no progress has been made against certain cancer types. Aggregating and sharing data can help in this space as well as we come to generate new innovations. For instance, certain brain tumors like diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma, or DIPG, have a truly grim prognosis with a median survival of just 9 months from the time of diagnosis. Aggregating and sharing data can help generate new ideas in this space as well. Overall, our goal is not simply to generate more data, but to build processes that transform that data into knowledge that actually moves the field forward in meaningful ways that we can use for each of these types of examples. So I want to address where we are presently with the challenges and opportunities that data provides in the childhood and AYA cancer research space. Data sharing is certainly not without its challenges. We know this isn't easy. If it was, we would have done it already. There are truly formidable technological, organizational, and financial challenges in an effort like this. An unprecedented amount of data is being produced from basic and clinical research and care. Various studies generate different types of data, use different analysis tools, have different IT structures. This leads to data collections that are siloed from one another. It also is true that there are not data standard collection practices, terminologies, not standard data models, no standardization of IT platforms or policies, and thus various systems are therefore not interoperable. And most importantly, organizational cultures, norms, habits, and attitudes are often counterproductive to data aggregation and sharing for a number of reasons. And this is really what we hope that the CCDI initiative could overcome. So despite these challenges, we do know that connecting data drives scientific discovery, and a fundamental principle is to collect data from basic research, clinical trials, clinical care, population studies, real-world patient data, preclinical models, and important biospecimen repositories. This is an area where there is a lot of information about how those biospecimens are being used. And if we had that information about each of those precious samples, we could eliminate researchers redoing the same experiment again and again and learning from research that's already been done. Collecting these data ultimately will underlie our overarching goal to maximize every opportunity to improve treatments and outcomes for children with cancer. To do this, we need to build a connected data infrastructure that enables sharing of childhood cancer data and AYA data from all available repositories. We need to develop and enhance tools and methods that can extract knowledge from these data, and ultimately this will allow us to identify opportunities to make data work better for patients, clinicians, and researchers. These, of course, are the principles upon which our Childhood Cancer Data Initiative is being developed. We've all heard that it takes a village, and that NCI can certainly lead and implement certain programs for this initiative and other efforts in childhood and AYA research, but we're not able to do it alone. It is important that the cancer research community and all of its stakeholders are able to support and implement similar approaches to data sharing if efforts to connect and optimally use this data are going to succeed. As such, the NCI is continually engaging the community around CCDI. The pediatric and AYA research and care community is already highly collaborative by nature, and so this obviously for us provides an excellent opportunity to show how we can collectively make the data work better for our investigators. As you are likely aware, in tuning in, NCI did convene a symposium in late July of diverse stakeholders in this space, including government, academia, industry, and advocacy, to confirm our goals and approach for this initiative within that larger pediatric research space. The symposium was made as open as was possible within limited space where our venue was, and we are happy to report that we had about 270 attendees in person and up to 700 participants online at any given time throughout our video cast. We designed the agenda to be as interactive as possible and included several panels for discussion. We had about 100 posters, which ensured the perspective of multiple stakeholders, including ethics and advocacy. We heard from a range of leaders in the field that are using data to outline various challenges and successes in sharing and using their data. And that really set the stage in those panels and in that poster session for our breakout sessions. In addition to the symposium, as many of you know, we reached out to the community to get ideas to help from this initiative, to help inform this initiative. A summary of those ideas, along with the poster abstracts and also the video recordings from the symposium that I just mentioned, are currently available on NCI's website, so I encourage everyone to look those over. Slides and/or summaries of presentations made more recently since the symposium, including reports out to the National Cancer Advisory Board on September 4th and to the NCI Council of Research Advocates on September 9th, will also be available in the coming weeks from the Division of Extramural Activities website. So I mentioned the breakouts, and our areas of focus for discussion in those breakout sessions and at the primary panels fell into four major categories and areas of focus that you see listed here. And as you can tell, they overlap. We did the best that we could to get some feedback and to ensure that we had very pointed discussions in each one of these. Those include prioritizing scientific and clinical research data needs for therapeutic progress, which was a group discussing critical questions to be answered in pediatric and AYA cancers by the whole community. The second was focused on creating meaningful data sets for clinical care and associated research progress. And this group discussed bold ideas for how we all might collect data better, what elements to include for broader application, and specific approaches that could increase data utility. The third focus group discussed what infrastructure would be needed and or possible to enable federation among various pediatric data repositories. And that would include basic science to clinical outcomes to surveillance data. And the fourth area of focus took on the development of tools and methods that would enable extraction of knowledge from that data. Because building a connected data ecosystem with well-annotated and quality data sets won't actually do anything to answer key questions or improve the lives of patients and their families living with cancer if we can't easily and efficiently analyze and further translate that critical information. The symposium was successful in generating critical discussion and innovative ideas that can be used across the childhood and AYA cancer and care communities. Ideas and topics discussed did confirm and enhance those ongoing at NCI. In brief, we'll highlight a few that rose to the top, and Tony will be able to expand on what we were talking about at NCI. As stated, there is a consensus that the community should identify and connect data repositories, and doing so will likely require instating a universal identifier. It was discussed that being able to query data aggregated from the Children's Oncology Group, Biology, and Clinical Studies would be highly beneficial to the community. There was interest within the community to expand the types of data collected for patients and families and to implement common protocols for standard data capture. And data efforts should include focus on improving access to preclinical data in addition to other data types. There is also a clear interest in the community for developing and maintaining a central resource catalog, denoting available data tools and other resources, as well as establishing standards and best practices for generating structured phenomic data, as well as sharing and transferring between repositories and existing registries or new registries. There were a number of tools presented and discussed throughout the meeting, but the community agreed that some key features would include those that automate extraction of structured and unstructured data and assist with standardizing analysis workflows and data capture, including real-world data and patient-reported outcomes. Ultimately, these tools and resources will allow us to identify opportunities to make data work better for patients, clinicians, and researchers. All of these efforts with data, tools, and resources will come together so that ultimately we are learning from every child so that every child can benefit from what we learn. And with that, I'd like to turn things over now to Tony to discuss ongoing progress in CCDI and how the initiative fits with other ongoing NCI data efforts.
Thank you, Jamie. As was previously mentioned, NCI leadership team for the CCDI is working hard to plan the immediate and near-term next steps for the initiative. We've begun working on a CCDI perspectives paper, which we plan to submit for publication later this fall, which will outline data science and data sharing approaches that will be used for CCDI and other ongoing NCI efforts that will support the initiative. A working group of the NCI Board of Scientific Advisors has been established and will convene to inform next steps for the CCDI. This group includes representatives from the NCI, as well as extramural researchers working in data science and pediatric oncology, and members of the childhood cancer community, including patient advocates. Finally, NCI leadership has started scientific planning on how to implement this initiative, anticipating initial funding this fiscal year. I've outlined here basically three activities that we'll focus on right after the gate. One NCI Acting Director Doug Lowy committed to at the symposium is to create and maintain a resource catalog for reference to and reuse of data, biospecimens, and tools. Second is starting pilot projects to connect repositories and registries that hold NCI-funded data. Some of these activities are already underway, including demonstrations of federation across the Kids First data resource and target data in NCI's Cancer Genomic Cloud. Third, defining criteria for ideal data sets. We're thinking about this not only in terms of retrospective data, but also prospectively, defining upfront minimal requirements that will enable us to answer the most important scientific questions. It's the scientific questions that are driving how we will collect, connect, and use data. The anticipated funding for CCDI presents us with an opportunity to collaborate and leverage the power of data to pursue critically important scientific questions in childhood, adolescent, and young adult cancers. These include studies specifically addressing stated issues in survivorship and clinical outcomes that examine the prevention and treatment of secondary cancers, long-term treatment side effects, and the continuum of care across all types of childhood and AYA cancers. We can improve our understanding of and discovery of novel therapeutic opportunities for childhood and AYA cancers that have few viable treatment options currently through increased power and information. This also supports the goals of the Childhood Cancer STAR Act. This could benefit lesser-known subtypes of childhood cancers, as well as relapsed or refractory cancers that aren't responding to standard therapies. Beyond using data for research and precision treatments, aggregating data from multiple sources could be applied clinically to support validation of molecular targets lists for drug development specific to the pediatric and AYA cancer population. This also supports the goals of the Race for Children Act. So you can clearly see that the CCDI initiative is synergistic with both the STAR and RACE Acts, with the potential for providing data that could be used by both of those efforts, and also a platform for dissemination of data from research efforts conducted under those two acts. NCI support for pediatric research has been steadily increasing in recent years, and it's a critical component of the NCI's portfolio. By focusing our efforts in key areas like determining data needs, by defining priority scientific questions, creating meaningful and useful data sets, creating the appropriate infrastructure to enable federation among data sets, and developing tools to extract knowledge from data, we can optimize the tremendous investment NCI has already made in pediatric cancer studies and the data those studies have generated. As we've mentioned, collectively, pediatric and AYA cancers are rare. There are challenges and considerations that are unique to this population. Therefore, focusing CCDI on optimizing data sharing and maximizing data use for both existing and newly generated data sets is particularly important given the overall number of cases seen. NCI supports a number of programs dedicated to studying AYA and childhood cancers and survivorship. These initiatives are all generating large volumes of clinical and research data that have been predominantly designed to answer a specific question or for some specific purpose. Data are stored in different repositories. Some NCI programs have data stored and maintained not only in NIH and NCI repositories, but also in data repositories that are maintained by our research grantees or children's hospitals or cancer care centers. So it's important that we work to find ways to connect these data repositories so the data that they hold can better be used by the broadest possible set of researchers. Connecting or federating these data repositories and identifying ways to improve data collection, data analysis, and use of these data, as well as new prospective data, will allow us to maximize every opportunity to understand and treat childhood and AYA cancers better. Integrating cancer research data is a goal that the NCI has been actively pursuing for several years through our Cancer Moonshot initiative. Our vision for a cancer data ecosystem is a knowledge network encompassing discovery research, clinical care and patient participation, and surveillance data at the population level. You'll notice many of the data generating programs and data resources from the previous slide are represented here. This ecosystem comprises a comprehensive data science infrastructure to support secure cloud computing, services to link disparate data types, standards and interoperability, analytics, sustainability, and governance. The NCI is developing a cancer research data commons as a core component of this ecosystem. A data commons co-locates data, storage, and computing infrastructure with commonly used tools for analyzing and sharing data to create an interoperable resource for the research community. The specific goals of the CRDC are to enable the cancer research community to share diverse data types across programs and across institutions, provide secure access to data regardless of where it's stored, provide mechanisms for innovative discovery, visualization, and analysis using the elastic compute capability of the cloud, and helping NCI data coordinating centers sustain and share their data publicly. The CRDC already has operational nodes for genomic and proteomic data, and we're working on new repositories for imaging, clinical trials, and canine models of cancer. It also has core framework services for user authentication and authorization to access data, data indexing, and APIs for analysis and visualization, tool integration. It's not difficult to see that the infrastructure developed for the CRDC could support the federation of pediatric cancer data across multiple repositories. But as we alluded to earlier, culture change is needed in the pediatric community for this initiative to be successful and for us to speed up progress in making advancements in pediatric cancer treatments. Cultural change begins at home. So NCI is implementing an enhanced data sharing and publication policy, beginning with our cancer moonshot programs, promoting broad, timely, and open access to data and journal articles without a paywall. The NCI has also lifted the publication embargo on the target osteosarcoma data. And furthermore, the NCI is committed to providing the resources and the appropriate environment, such as those that I described in the previous slides, to incentivize and facilitate data aggregation and sharing. But ultimately, the community itself has to make commitments to embrace the fundamental principles that working collaboratively and sharing their research results broadly with the pediatric research and care community will greatly benefit children, adolescents, and young adults with cancer. And if we're successful demonstrating data sharing for childhood and AYA cancers, this can be a model for all of cancer. I want to close with some more technical as well as cultural principles for the community to ensure success of CCDI, courtesy of Dr. Bob Grossman from the University of Chicago, who presented these on his poster at the symposium. So here are a list of do's that all researchers and data repositories should adhere to. Please do use digital identifiers for your data. Please do interoperate with third-party authentication and authorization services. Do expose your data through an API. Expose your data model through an API. Interoperate with other trusted data commons with similar security and compliance. And process authorized queries from other systems and return the results. There's also a concomitant list of don'ts. Don't refuse to expose any API and instead require all users to use your platform. Don't bring data in from other resources and platforms into your system, but don't let your data out. And don't refuse to interoperate with other systems with the same or greater security compliance. So only by gaining agreement to follow these principles will we be successful in sharing childhood cancer data through a connected data infrastructure to collaborate in optimal ways, to leverage the power of data to pursue critically important scientific questions, and ultimately improve treatments and outcomes for children with cancer. As Jamie said, ultimately we want to learn from every child so that every child benefits from what we learn.
Thank you, Dr. Karlavich and Dr. Guidry-Avil. We will now take questions. If you have a question, please type them in the chat box now and we will address them. We do have a few questions that came in through registration, so we'll start with those. First question, what kind of data will be connected through the initiative? Jamie?
So I think as Tony was mentioning, we do intend to connect as many of the existing repositories that are holding pediatric and AYA data as are possible. These may include data from discovery research, clinical trials, cohorts, state registries, biobanks, and other sources. So I would expect many different types of data.
Great, thank you. Next question. What do you foresee being the biggest challenge associated with the increased amount of data that is available for use in elucidating personalized medicine regimens from the database?
Yeah, thanks, Tina. Thanks for that question. It's a terrific one. Jamie and I, during the presentation, tried to address this in a number of different ways. There are several different challenges, mainly that these data are siloed from one another. Consistent study design, proper terminologies and ontologies, consistent consent for general research use are key. Unfortunately, these aren't common across programs, so that will be a major challenge. Data governance, infrastructure costs, and sustainability are also issues. So ongoing funding for programs like this is key as well.
Okay, thank you, Tony. What age groups are included in CCDI, and does CCDI include AYA?
Yes, so we did, as Tony mentioned, try to address this throughout the slides and hopefully say it often, because we do want to reiterate that CCDI is intended to facilitate access to the broadest possible collection of data so that we can answer all types of important scientific questions that would be relevant for any age group of interest within the childhood, adolescent, and young adult population. And NCI defines the adolescent and young adult population as ages 15 through 39 years of age. So, yes, that would effectively be collecting and making available and maximizing the use of data from birth through 39 years of age.
Thank you, Jamie. Next question, how can we connect the individual pediatric oncologists with a national and international database which would allow them to understand better the choices available for specific cancers, especially after remission?
That's a terrific question. As a first step, we're going to be developing a catalog of all data resources, as I mentioned. So just knowing what exists is a great place to start. But for the initiative to be truly successful, it's going to have to meet the needs of many constituent groups, including pediatric oncologists and patients. The way we deal with direct patient engagement today is by outreach to that community to understand their needs. This will also mean different ways of interacting with the data, different types of portals that are tailored to researchers, to people who are studying populations, to people who are just seeking information about their own cancer type or their child's cancer, and oncologists who are helping patients to understand what information is known about that type of cancer, potentially what types of treatments are available to them.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question, what message can be shared with the developing world regarding this initiative and its impact on the global community?
I can take that one. So, as I think we've alluded to, hopefully, childhood cancer is a global issue, and we would hope to not only share information from CCDI within our countries, but also, or with our country, but also with other countries, and to work to include the output of that research within our initiative. So there are already important ongoing work across the globe and several international initiatives that are led by NCI and a number of U.S. children's hospitals and cancer care centers, along with global partners. So yes, while this is funded in the U.S., led in the U.S., we would intend that to be as focused on all children and AYA populations globally as would allow.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we have no more questions at this time. So given that, we will go ahead and close out the call. We do have one question, sorry. So the question is, what standard data elements vocabulary should be used or recommended by NCI?
That's a terrific question. You know, the NCI already has made some major investments in terminologies with the NCI thesaurus, with common data elements that are broadly used across a number of different types of research areas of clinical trials. However, I will say in the context of the Cancer Research Data Commons, we have just made an award to a group of eminent people in the field who are experts in data modeling and ontologies. We're going to have that group actually giving us input on what are the best set of terminologies, of data models, of ontologies and data elements that should be used to integrate across these multiple data sets. As you might imagine, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be a tremendous task since all of these programs did their research independently, not necessarily having common data elements at the start. You can't easily go back and change all of that. So this group is actually going to work to help us map to some minimal common data model, and that way that will allow us to actually connect these data sets as best as possible. So the answer is this is a work in progress. This is something that will improve iteratively, and it will improve over time as more and more data are brought into this federation of the CCDI.
Great. Thank you. Looks like we have another question. Says much of the available data are on patients treated on clinical trials. Are there plans to capture data on pediatric cancer patients not treated in clinical trials?
Yes. Yeah. No, I think we've stated this before. This group is highly collaborative and really does get involved with clinical trials, but certainly on a much higher frequency than those in adult cancers. And we do want to capture that data, but it's important, as we mentioned, to capture information about all patients that would be useful. And there are plenty of children and young adults that aren't able to get onto clinical trials. And it is important that we not only learn from them, but also collect data that can help to improve whatever cancer they are dealing with as well, whether that falls into something that's easily treatable and they don't have the same access, or if it's difficult to treat, then we want to know why it's difficult to treat. So that is critical to get that information and to figure out how to do that and do it in a meaningful way. So absolutely, we would like to include all patients within that population, that age range of the population.
Right, and there are a couple of different ways we can do that. I mean, there are cohorts of survivors, so survivorship studies are really critical in this. Plus, there's also a wealth of information in state cancer registries, and we are already thinking about how we can do some linkages of state cancer registry data and other data resources that will help tie these together across the United States. And of course, these are not necessarily children or young adults who are not on clinical trials.
So I think we're just looking to see if we have any other questions, and it looks like we don't have any further questions at this time. If your question was not answered, we'll happily follow up with you after the call. Thank you again to both of you for joining us today, and thank you for all of you on the line. We encourage you to visit our website to review the summary of research ideas shared regarding the initiative and to review the archived videocast of the symposium that was held in July. Shortly after this webinar, we'll also send out an email with links to both of these resources as well as our Childhood Cancer Data Initiative webpage where you can find updates. And for further updates, we also encourage you to sign up for our CCDI email list, which will be included in the email that we send out. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.